Hey there, fellow entrepreneurs. I'm Sue, and you've just stepped into Entrepreneurs Gone Wild. Every week, I'll introduce you to a friend of mine, a remarkable entrepreneur who's not just changing the world, but also harnessing a secret weapon, time outdoors. Together, we'll dive into their journey, unpack invaluable business advice, and discover why embracing the wild is not just good for the soul, but also a goldmine for inspiration and innovation. Ready to uncover the secret that's boosting bottom lines and fueling joy? Hit subscribe and join us in the wild. Welcome back to Entrepreneurs Gone Wild. Oh my gosh, this one's going to be fun. So remember Stacy Lauren that we talked to? This is how I met our guest of today, which is Gregory Benedikt, and he's the host of the Dare to Dream podcast. So it's podcaster and podcaster. This will be so cool. So, Gregory, welcome to the show, and would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Sue. My name is Gregory Benedikt, and as Sue mentioned, I am host of the Dare to Dream podcast. I am also a leadership and life coach. So I coach leaders in Fortune 500 companies around leadership, and then I coach people one-on-one around more life stuff, this life philosophy called Live a Story Worth Telling, which we'll get into, I'm sure.
Can't wait to hear about that. Oh my gosh, you have the podcaster voice. I love it. You get that all the time. People are like, voice like butter.
I don't get it enough. I need that reinforcement. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's funny, podcasting, it's like one of the biggest adjustments people make is, I can't stand to hear myself, like my voice, it sounds weird. And then after a while, like you don't even notice it, right? You're just like, oh, that's just how I sound and this is it. But you sound good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's funny. I hated my voice at first and now I like it. And that brings its own set of problems with you like hearing yourself talk. So you need to hold back, but love opportunities like this to talk and tell my story.
Well, I can't wait to hear it all. Let's just dive in. So tell me, what was your life like before your whole entrepreneurial journey started? What was like your normal everyday?
My life was very much what you just alluded to. It was very normal. I tell people that my life really started in 2020 when I started making some big changes, and that's when I view my life as being exciting and really starting. But before that, I was in the ordinary world. I was living the life that others expected of me. I had gone to school in California. I studied finance. I loved finance, actually. I had a really great finance professor, and I fell in love with it. I'm very analytical. I loved the challenge. It was the hardest classes I've ever taken. And I thought my dream, funny enough, looking back, I thought my dream was to work in finance forever. I thought it was to work in private equity. And I quickly and painfully realized that that was not the case.
Yeah. What happened? What happened? The turning point? I'm dying to hear.
Yeah. So I was working in finance. And after a couple of years, I just started to feel so empty. I felt completely uninspired. I felt like my life lacked any sort of purpose. I'm just living in Excel 11 hours a day doing financial modeling. And I knew I wanted to do something else, but I had no idea what to do next. I was desperately hoping for that lightning bolt moment when you find what you're passionate about and the path becomes clear and you're ready to set off on your hero's journey. But that wasn't happening. And I knew that if I stayed any longer in finance, my soul was going to die. And so there was this one moment that I guess it was lightning bolt-esque, where I was in Tokyo, Japan, halfway across the world, still working in finance, but I was on a trip with some of my best friends from college. And I was listening to this podcast about the top regrets of the dying. There's this woman named Bronnie Ware, and she wrote a best-selling book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she was a palliative care nurse who worked with people as they were passing, and she interviewed over 500 of her patients on their deathbed. And what she found is that not only do most people have serious end-of-life regret, but they have the same 5 regrets. And the number one regret people have when they get to the end of their life is, I wish I would have had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expect of me. And when I heard that line, that single line, I felt like someone had punched me in the face because I was completely living the life others expect of me. I was working in finance because I was the successful young man on the right path, and I was still partying because my college friends loved Party Greg, even though I hated it. And when I was listening to that episode, I was violently hungover. We went to karaoke the night before in Tokyo.
Oh.
And I was just like, man, what am I doing with my life? And then, that quote comes in, and existential crisis number 2 for me. I had one previous, but I realized that I needed to make a change. I needed to take off the mask I was wearing of who everyone else wanted me to be. And I needed to show the world my true self, my true colors. And so I got back from that trip and I made the commitment that I was going to quit my job in finance that year, and then enter COVID. COVID happens, and it was really such a blessing for me because it was a catalyst. We have this global pandemic, no one knows what's happening, and it really made me take a look at my life and say, if I'm not going to quit my job now when the world is potentially ending, this was in the beginning, no one knew what was going on, then I'm never going to quit. I'm going to wake up at 55, be working in finance, depressed, and say, what happened? Where did I settle? And so in that moment, I decided it was time. I decided to, using dramatic language, I say, hurl myself into the unknown. I quit my job in June of 2020. I told my CEO that I was going to start a personal development company because I was too embarrassed to say, I don't know what I'm doing next. And for the first moment in my life, I feel like that was the beginning of recreating myself as someone who is bold, who is adventurous, who takes risks. And that truly is when the magic started to happen.
Oh man, that is so incredible. How old are you?
I am 28. I'm turning 29 in January.
That's amazing. So to look forward, and I just admire that so much. You're able to look forward 20, 30 years and go, is that where I want to go? No. All right, here's my opportunity for an off-ramp. The way that you put that, looking at, okay, the world could be literally ending. If this isn't the time to quit and do what I really feel like I need to do, when would I do it? And you did it. Wow. What did that feel like? Were you terrified? Especially like you said, like talking to the CEO, I'm going to do, there must have been other people too that you were kind of concerned, like, what are they going to think? What is this going to be? How are they going to be worried about me? All of that. What was that like?
It was scary, terrifying, exciting, joyful. It was the first time in my life where I felt like I was listening to my heart and my soul instead of just my head. And it was also incredibly challenging. Some of the first people I told were my parents, and they're amazing parents. I love them so much. But I'd love to get your take on this, but as a parent, I'm not sure if you have kids or not. Yeah. So as a parent, you prioritize the security and the safety of your child probably over their happiness and fulfillment and joy. And so I told my parents that I'm quitting my job. I don't know what's next. It's wonderful. I told my dad, 50% of my plan is to have no plan. And my dad is like the most logical. He also was a business guy, and he just kind of looks at me and I'm like, yep, that's it. And it was really hard because of course they were asking all these questions and I was like, stop doubting me. But once I was able to believe in myself and say, I'm doing this, I don't need your approval, but I would eventually like your love and support. That's when they got on board. And so it was really hard in the beginning, but like I said, I had this soul calling. I feel like it was the inner voice calling me into adventure, and I listened to it for the first time in my life. And it was through heeding that call to adventure that when I say the magic started to happen, literally magic. And so 2 weeks after I quit my job, I'm introduced to a stranger on the internet by another stranger on the internet who says, you need to meet this person, Tim. You guys are so aligned. And I meet Tim. We end up starting a nonprofit together. And that is what introduced me to what I do today. It brought me to leadership coaching. It brought me to just this beautiful world that I never would have imagined or ever seen if I had not taken that first step. And so we'll talk a lot about this along the story, but one of the biggest life philosophies I live by is just take the first step and then you'll see what happens. That's when the doors and the opportunities start to open.
Wow. I mean, yeah, look at this. Like your parents not only spent their your whole life protecting, providing, making sure, helping you, like line you up on the rails, right? Like he's in finance. This is going to be great. He did great at finance. This is going to be a fantastic career. We've done this. Like, right. Wait a second. Now he's doing what?
They thought their job was done and it was just beginning.
Oh no. Yeah. They didn't know what worry meant. Right. So, yeah. And then the other thing they probably spent their whole lives telling you was don't talk to strangers. Right? And then here's the internet, you're talking to a stranger, you end up in business, you're doing all this. This is some bold moves to be making that, out of the blue seemingly, but you listened to that thing that was in you. What was that like? Were you like, with each step that you took, was it growing in confidence or constantly like, wait a second, am I nuts? I actually don't have, were there freakouts, or was it more kind of like, okay, each step confirming the last, or what was that like?
It was so much of what you said. The whole journey has been a mixture of doubt and confidence. One of my best friends, his name is Vinny. He's the co-host of the podcast. We always joke with each other that we are just treading water in the existential soup. We're constantly questioning everything. The doubt, I think, will always be there, but now I've learned to walk alongside the doubt and welcome it. I think it's healthy to question things, but there's never been a moment where I was like, wow, I wish I stayed in finance, or I want to go back to finance. Sure, there are days where I think, wow, it'd be so easy. It'd be so much easier and nice if I had a 9-to-5 and people paid me for just showing up and being there. But there's never been a moment where I've wanted to go back, because this new life, this new persona I've created, it's so much more fulfilling and exciting.
That's neat. That's really cool. Because there are those, scary moments. And like you said, there is that lure of working 9-to-5, you get paid for breathing. If you do stuff, that's great too. But so right. What kinds of, shifting, it's not like you had a whole lot of educational overlap or anything like this. How did you go from I'm doing finance to, okay, now I'm coaching and I'm podcasting and all this? What was that, not logically, but like logistically, how was this happening for you? What'd you do?
Right. It happened one step at a time. So I would trust in the unknown. I would lean into it. Something would happen. And then it would introduce me to a new world with new doors, with new opportunities. And then I would just keep leaning in and keep trying to realign and listen to that inner voice. And so to put some specifics to it, started the nonprofit with Tim. We partnered with a big coaching company called the International Coaching Federation. And that is how I was introduced to coaching. I had never heard of a coach beyond a soccer coach. Like, I played soccer my whole life. But then I learned about executive coaching and life coaching and all of this stuff. And through partnering with them, I was introduced to coaching, and I realized that, okay, that's it. I love this piece of it. I don't necessarily love nonprofit management and fundraising. And it was these moments of being close to the dream, feeling like I was on the path, and then realizing that, okay, here's a dead end again. Let me turn to the right and walk that way now. So it's a constant leaning into the unknown, stepping out of your comfort zone and just iterating and readjusting along the way. And one thing that has played a huge role in my life is this concept of heeding that inner voice, that inner guidance. Viktor Frankl talks about it. He says, listen to what your conscience commands you to do. And that is how you find happiness, success, freedom, all the things. And I truly believe if you don't listen to that inner voice, that's how you end up clinically depressed, anxious, lonely, chronic pain, all of the ailments, because you're resisting this. It's probably your soul talking to you. Who knows what it is? But to answer your question of like how it actually happened logistically, it's constant moments of listening to that, readjusting, and then making changes. And it's not easy. One thing I talk about a lot is how my gut, my intuition always knows what I need to do about 3 months before I make the decision. And then I spend those 3 months rationalizing, coming up with all these reasons, like intellectualizing why, oh no, I can't do that. I can't make a huge life pivot again. Like, I already did that, right? Isn't once enough? And then again, I just sit with it and it just gets more and more and more uncomfortable. And then I finally make the decision and I'm like, wow, I should have just listened to the inner voice the first time.
Yeah, it's amazing. It can be really hard to do that sometimes. I think some of me, I kind of feel like as kids we're maybe not by parents, but school, by basically kid life is kind of aimed at drumming that out of us, I think.
Totally.
And so how did you go about kind of first hearing your own voice, knowing what that was, am I crazy or what is this thing? And then learning to trust it. How was that process?
Really hard. The trust is still like, there's still things right now that I know I need to do, that I should act on, that I'm not ready to. And it's getting comfortable with grappling with that. But it really all came about through trying things, putting myself in new situations. I'm really big on seeking voluntary discomfort, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations so that you can learn more about yourself and see what happens when you're in that crucible, when you're in that pressure cooker. There's super cool research around when you put yourself in new and challenging and exciting situations, genes that would not have turned on upregulate. And so you literally unlock new parts of yourself by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Wow. I've never heard that. That is so cool. Oh my God.
One of the coolest things I've ever learned. And I remind myself of that when there's something scary that I know would be wonderful. It would move me forward. It would help me grow, but I don't want to do it.
That's cool. What do you tell yourself, or what would you tell a client?
I tell myself, it's funny, I'm looking down at my arm. So I actually have my life philosophy. I got it tattooed on my arm when I was in Japan this past year with Vinny. I got it tattooed in English. His is in Japanese, and it says, "Live a story worth telling." It's facing me. It's a personal reminder. It's small. It's not meant for anyone else to see. But anytime that I'm feeling scared, anxious, uncomfortable, and I don't want to do the thing, but I know I need to do the thing, I look down at my arm and I just say, "Live a story worth telling." And then I do it.
You can't not now. It's on your skin. I get that.
Exactly. It's a commitment device. I knew that I would be unable to live with myself living an average, ordinary life if I had this tattooed on my arm. So I was like, what are the actions I can take today to ensure that future Greg is living an epic life?
This is fantastic. And Greg, this is stuff I've heard 60, 70-year-olds that don't have this stuff down. So I'm just like, wow. Age is just a construct and all, but this is so cool. I'm so excited for your next 80 to 100 years because you've already got this, you're living this. This is fantastic. The adventure that you've set yourself up for life that's kind of cool.
Thank you.
But I'm sure it hasn't all been, smooth, easy. It never is. So, all right.
It never is.
It never is. What kind of speed bumps have you run into, and how'd you get past them?
I'm constantly hitting speed bumps. I'm great at speed bumps. I'm also great at existential crises.
Good. My specialty.
Right. I joke and I tell people that I had 2 existential life crises before I was 25. And I'm constantly one of my strengths is openness and curiosity, but it's a double-edged sword because I'm always questioning everything. Things will be going great. I'll be building steam and momentum with my coaching. And then one day I'll wake up and I'll be like, why am I doing any of this? Is this really what I want to be doing? And through the process of journaling, meditating, thinking through it all, I'm like, okay, yeah, we're on the right track. So it's checking in with all of that. But some of the speed bumps, especially this year, I have a really harsh inner critic, as I'm sure many people listening to this podcast do. And learning to dance with it instead of letting it just beat me over the head with a club has been a big part of my journey and a big struggle. And so this year specifically, this is my 2nd year of coaching, but my 1st year of being an ICF credentialed coach. I did a year-long program in leadership coaching. And so technically this is the 1st official year. And one of the biggest challenges has been feeling like I should be further along, or I should be more successful. I should be making more money. I should be working with more people because I want to work with as many people as possible to help them live a story worth telling, and really grappling with how hard it has been. And a really helpful mindset shift this year was realizing that it is supposed to be hard. It is supposed to be hard. Alex Hormozy says this thing, "This is what hard feels like." And that was a game changer for me. I actually went back. So to give a little context, when I was in my sad finance days, I was studying for the CFA. It's this really big financial test. I passed level 1 of it. And that was one of the moments where I proved to myself that I could do hard things. I studied 428 hours for it. You're only supposed to study like 300. And it was so hard, but I was really proud of how hard it was and how hard I was working. So when I was reflecting this year on, okay, I'm working super hard at building this coaching business, but I'm feeling almost like ashamed that I'm having to work so hard. Like, where's the disconnect? And so I went back and I looked at the pass rate for level 1 of the CFA. It was like 40%. And then I went and looked at the percentage of life coaches who are successful, who successfully build a business. And it was like 10%. And that really helped me, like, oh, okay, this is supposed to be hard. And actually it's like 4 times harder than the CFA, which was like the hardest thing I had done yet. So the struggles have been doubting myself, questioning everything, thinking it shouldn't be as hard as it is, beating myself up for it being so hard, but coming to terms with this is reality and this is how it's actually supposed to be. And if I zoom way out, I'm actually doing a great job and I'm young and making progress.
Yeah.
That's been really helpful.
That's huge. I mean, I love that. Just that simple statement of this is what hard feels like, because it can kind of feel like, well, everything feels hard, or, well, nothing's supposed to feel hard. I think we're out of touch with why things are hard, why we don't feel good sometimes, and why am I feeling anxious and all that. Okay, this is hard. What you're doing, a hard thing. And it feels like if we can kind of connect with that again, it kind of lets us off. There's the feeling, and then there's all this mishada going on as far as what we're thinking about the feeling and how we're explaining it to ourselves, and all of that. If we can get rid of that, maybe the hard doesn't feel as hard. Has that been your story as well? Absolutely.
Now that I've had that kind of come to Jesus moment where I'm like, okay, this is exactly how it's supposed to be, it feels a lot better. It feels there's a lot less pressure I'm putting on myself. And I'm also realizing, like, a huge thing that has impacted me lately is realizing that probably the most important thing, the thing that's going to be most indicative of my success, is staying in the game. Like, just doing what I need to do in order to keep coaching, keep podcasting. And if I just never quit, if I just never give up, it's statistically probable that I'll succeed in the things, because I just keep showing up.
I love your brain. I mean, you've got the great finance and math. At first I was like, whoa, because I took finance and it was hard. I know how that is. But you've also got this very emotionally intelligent, intuitive thing going. This is kind of a fun brain to walk around with, I would think.
Sometimes it's very fun. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I'm just questioning everything. Like, what if I could just have a simple, this is what I do, and I don't ask questions.
Have you ever met anybody like that, though?
Well, it's really interesting because my dad is one of the smartest, most successful people I know. And he always tells me, he's like, dude, like, chill out. Like, just relax. Stop asking so many questions. He's like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have a 5-year vision. He compares it to being like a bubble in the river, just like floating down the stream. He's like, just do more of that. You don't need to question everything so much. And so that's also, I would say, been a challenge for me. It's like, I want that, but I also really value how deeply I think about things. And so just learning to use it to my advantage and not just wallow in the existentialness.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's real easy to end up shouting into the void, right? My stepdad is also like that. Was very successful, worked for IBM for decades. I mean, did amazingly. And he has also used, I believe, that bubble on a river thing. And I'm like, wait, no, but there's all these fish and there's rocks and there's sticks and you're looking at the sun. I can't just be a bubble.
Right.
But I think this is fantastic. You've learned some ways to kind of talk with your brain and maybe come to a meeting of the minds where you can continue on. Because, the anxiety, that curiosity, when curiosity turns dark or turns too far, like the self-examination, there's so many pitfalls that the brain can help us do.
Right.
What has been the best thing, that you've been able to tell your brain so that you can continue going rather than sit and stew and look?
The best thing is shifting my focus to character, the person I want to become. One of my favorite quotes is Seneca, and he says, "Where you arrive does not matter so much as the type of person you are when you arrive there." So it really is about your character and what kind of person you become along the way. It's less about the destination. You know, there's that cliche, it's not the journey, it's not the destination, it's the journey. But for me, it's really like, who am I becoming? And if you look at character, another one of my favorite quotes, I love quotes, is character, like a photograph, develops in the darkness. And if you look at character and how to build character, you don't build character by watching the Kardashians on Sunday night, sitting on the couch. Like, you build character by doing hard stuff, by being uncomfortable, by feeling overwhelmed, by feeling like you can't handle it, and then figuring out a way to handle it. So for me, the biggest shift in how I get out of my head is the value, seeing the value in doing hard things, seeking discomfort. I'm sure we'll get to it when we talk about outdoors stuff, but doing hard physical challenges that are like no brain power involved, the brain actually gets in the way, that has been a huge catalyst to my growth as well. So it's that shift from stop thinking so much and just do the hard thing, like go carry a big rock up a hill or something.
It sounds very Scottish, actually. Let's go throw heavy things and carry heavy rocks, right?
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear all that. We're going to dive into that so hard. Before we do, though, so tell me a little bit about, like, who do you actually coach? You know, what kinds of things are you helping them with? What are you seeing as some, that's too many questions in a row, but I have a lot of them. Who are you working with?
Yeah, so I started working with anyone and everyone because I love coaching. I love seeing people get clear on what they want and take action toward a goal, a dream, the things they've always wanted. So it started there, and now I'm in the process of niching down and figuring out, okay, what is it that I'm truly here to do? Like me, not the other 1.5 million life coaches. And for me, it's helping people live a story worth telling. And living a story worth telling is having the courage to follow your dreams, having the boldness to step out of your comfort zone and go after everything you want in life. Like, you only have one shot at this, because we only have one shot at this, but we, you know, forget it. We say we'll do it someday. And there's so many components to living a story worth telling, but I've kind of broken it down across 6 pillars. There's boldness, which is huge. I'm sure you've heard the quote, "Fortune favors the bold." I love this quote. And the more I thought about it, I realized, okay, fortune is what happens to us in life. We can't really control that. If we take a stoic lens, we can't really control what happens to us, but we can absolutely control how bold we're being. So what would happen if we just turned the boldness up in our own life? Well, maybe fortune and the things that happen to us would also improve. And so my hypothesis has been that the universe rewards bold behavior. And that's what I've been doing. And that's what I help people with. I just did 66 days of talking to strangers and asking them for outrageous things. We'll come back to that in a moment, but boldness is the first pillar. Clarity is so important. Figuring out who you want to be, and then simply asking, if that's who I want to be, what would that person do? And so there's this tension between being and doing. For me, I've struggled with it. Do I just do all of these things? Do I focus on who I'm being? And the answer that has really helped me is it's both. You think of, what would the best version of myself do? Like, who is that person? And then you go take action around it. So it's boldness, clarity. Health is absolutely just so important. You have to be healthy. You have to have the energy. So that's one of the pillars. Love is the next one. Love for yourself, love for others. Helping increase people's level of self-love has been hugely rewarding for myself, because that's something I'm constantly working on. Fear is the next one. I believe that everything we want in life is on the other side of fear. And one of the quickest ways to figure out where you should go is to use fear as a compass. Make a list of the things you're scared of and start doing them, because they're keeping you from something. You're scared of it for a certain reason. So boldness, clarity, health, love, fear. And then the last one is purpose. Finding your purpose is super, super heavy. I struggled for like 5 years to find my purpose. So now I help people find a purpose. Like, find the purpose for this next chapter of your life. It doesn't have to be what you do forever, but knowing why you want to do something and like you're really connected to it is like rocket fuel for your dream. And so I help people across those 6 pillars, and the people that I help, and this is really who I'm leaning into helping, is people over 50 or around 50 who have had a very successful, long, meaningful career, usually in the corporate world, And now they're saying, okay, I've grinded for all these years. Now it's time to do what my soul is really here to do, because a lot of them are having some of those regrets. They're waking up and they're realizing, oh shit, I spent my whole life building this career, you know, for my family, for my kids, for good reasons, but I'm feeling empty now and I want to live again. And so I focus on that demographic, helping them find life again, helping them feel fully alive. And that's usually through boldness, facing their fears, getting out of their comfort zone, and helping them tap into that dream that has always been in there, but they've been putting on the back burner for years.
Oh, I love that so much. So I'm 56. And I know, like, so with us starting, my husband's 57, with us starting this brand new adventure of having a retreat center, there's definitely that voice sometimes going, are you crazy? Like, and I imagine for somebody, especially they've had a very successful corporate life, those guardrails on them are very hard to, you know, it's like cement. Here's the avenue you are traveling on. So getting off of that, it's got to be a huge adjustment for them. They're so smart to seek you out. What are some of the dreams that you're helping people see and start to take action on? And obviously you don't have to break any confidence, but anything that you can say, this would be really cool to hear.
It's always the same thing. It's the dream that they put on the back burner for years. So it's the thing that they would do if they had all the money in the world. And that's one of the questions I ask people to help them uncover the dream is, if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do? If you could do absolutely anything with your life, if you're listening to this right now, ask yourself, you could do absolutely anything with your life. What would you do? How would you help? It usually always has to do with helping people, which is awesome. I love it. And the people I work with, it's usually helping them follow a pursuit, a dream that is going to ultimately give back. So it's helping them become a coach, helping them become a teacher. There's one woman who I'm looking at working with who wants to bring financial literacy to women. There's so many cool dreams out there, and it really takes courage. It takes a little bit of risk, and that's why the feedback I'm getting from these clients I'm working with, why I'm the perfect person to do it and to help them with, is because I'm doing all the things that they wish they would have done, 25 years ago. And I'm less jaded. I haven't had all the experiences beat me down yet. And so I'm really encouraging them to just take the step and see what happens.
That's really cool. Because I'm sure, it can get hard. I've found that especially for a lot of women, if they've spent most of their lives, they're, maybe working a job, they're taking care of the family. There's so much that's all directed, every direction, that is very common, that they're like, what do I want? I don't even know. Right. Are you finding that with them? The lottery question, that's fantastic. Does it take quite a bit of digging sometimes with these clients to help them even be able to hear that voice saying, I want this?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's really two different camps. One is they've known all along and they've been shoving it down and not looking at it. And those people probably need it faster. Mm-hmm. And then the other camp is exactly as you said, of, oh, wow, I've never really thought about what I want. I was so busy providing for other people and putting other people's needs in front of mine that I haven't thought about it. And I love working with those people because we need to be selfish in order to be selfless. You have to focus on yourself and filling your cup and tapping into what you feel like you're here to do to really feel fulfilled and really help, because you have a unique gift that's waiting for you to find it and take action on it. And so it's a lot of, like I said, there's that woman with financial literacy. For other women, it's starting a lot of companies. I'm working with a client right now who's starting a product, like a facial product company that he's been putting off for years. And that's where the whole entrepreneur thing is. I love working with anyone who has a dream, because once you take that first step, you dare to dream and you're on that path. That's when so much magic and aliveness really opens up. And I'd love to ask you, when you started this newest adventure of yours, I'm sure you it's not good all the time, but you feel alive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely, definitely. And because it's something that's so like deeply like I want like the calling on this is so hard that it's like I can't not do it. Like, is it taking longer than I thought? Oh yeah, it's taking way longer. Has it been harder? Oh, already been harder than ever. But it's like I love entrepreneurs so much. I love how our brains work. I know that they're indoors too much. There's like this passion that drives it. So every time that it's hard, I think, all right, so if I don't make this, what then? Is somebody else? Maybe somebody else will, but this is the thing I want to do, and it's like that drive, it keeps you going.
I love what you said, that you can't not do it. That's exactly how I felt right before I quit my job, way back in the dark days of finances. I knew that if I stayed, my soul was going to die. Like it became a non-option to not do it anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny when I was telling my kids who are, so I have a 27-year-old and a 24-year-old. And when I was telling them, hey, we're going to do this, they know I've never done this before. And they both kind of came back with, well, go for it, because if you don't, you'll always wonder, and that's that one of those regrets that people have when they're dying. And that's really motivating. But it's rare to see somebody get in front of that, like most of the time I would imagine it just happens and then they're like, oh crap, but to use that, like that spurred you on. That's a huge thing that I've adopted for myself as well. It's incredible to watch people take that new adventure, and you're doing it too. So you're with them on the path, a different path. Of course, you're doing a different thing than they are, but that's got to be really inspiring for them to see you're, taking risks and doing this yourself, that boldness.
I am very much on the path, and that's how I want to live my entire life. I never want to be a finished product where I'm teaching people how to get to where I ended up. I always want to be helping people as I'm also progressing, because I think there's so much credibility in that. It's like everything that I help people with, I am living. I have it tattooed on my arm. I eat my own dog food. I'm all of the things, like all of the frameworks and the pillars and the programs and the workshops, it's all stuff that I have used to help myself. And that's also where the piece of you need to help yourself first, and then you get to help other people. And actually, let's not say first, it's simultaneous. It's at the same time.
Yeah, it really is. All right, now I got to hear about doing the hard things outside. What do you do outside? How do you outdoors?
I love the outdoors. I grew up in Bend, Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest, which is super outdoorsy, beautiful place. And my backyard was forest. So growing up, just running around on all the rocks, so much fun. But there's so much value in going and doing hard things outside. I tell people part of my coaching programs is transformational coaching. We will have transformational conversations that will change your life. But there's also this whole other piece that I feel like is lacking in the coaching industry, and something that I want to bring into it more is transformational experiences. Transformational experiences outside, where you go do something that either you or other people had previously labeled as impossible. And when you do it, you come back to your life with so much gratitude, because you're not doing the hard thing anymore and you can just sit down and have a slice of pizza. But you also realize, okay, if I can do that, like what else can I do? It makes you look at your life in a whole new way. And I want people to set goals and talk about their dreams after they've done something really hard. So it kind of blows the lid off what they think is possible for themselves.
Yeah.
And so for me, one of the foundational experiences on my journey was, I think it was in 2019. I was still working my finance job. I ran my first half marathon. It was in Joshua Tree, and I was going with one of my good friends, and she didn't show up. So I'm in Joshua Tree running this race. She didn't show up, so I was frustrated. And then I find out that the race actually isn't in Joshua Tree Park. It's like outside it on some fire road for liability reasons. And I end up running this half marathon. It's at night because they said you're going to be out under the stars. It's cloudy. It's pitch black. We're running in deep sand. They didn't tell us until 3 days before that the road, because of the heat and whatever, it was complete sand. And so I run this race. I'm pissed off my friend isn't there. I'm pissed off I can't see the stars. I'm pissed off I'm running in sand. and I end up running really, really fast. My first half
You're
marathon.
so mad.
I'm so mad. I'm so mad. And I was repeating to myself a mantra the whole time. If you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. I was like, I'm out here. I'm doing this thing. I might as well give it all I got. So I run the race really fast. First half marathon I've ever done. I win my age group. And in a single moment, it transformed how I viewed myself. Before that, I was like, okay, I'm moderately athletic. Maybe I can do hard things if I train a lot, whatever. But in this moment, I realized, okay, I can do hard things if I push myself, if I see what I'm capable of. And from there, I got obsessed with doing really hard things and seeing who I am in that moment when everything hurts, when I want to give up, when I want to quit. I call it being in the pain cave. So after that, I did the 4x4x48. It's a fitness challenge that David Goggins created. You run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours straight. That was a whole new level of pain and discovery and just learning more about myself. And then my friends and I, we did a homemade 50-mile ultra marathon just on the street, on the side of a road. Do not recommend it. It was terrible. But these experiences in the outdoors, pushing myself, have really shaped me so much. And there's certain things you get out of those experiences that you just can't get in a conversation.
Wow. Oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. All right, first of all, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. Love that. Oh my gosh. So, wow. Okay, so do you use this in your coaching, or is there homework?
I am right on the precipice of bringing this into my coaching because it's so specific to each client what is going to be like their ultimate limit. But that is the next step for me. Is the next coaching program I sell is going to have the coaching. That's what I've been doing, but it is going to have transformational experiences that are hard. And then another piece of it is having those bucket list experiences. I have clients make a list of 25 experiences that they need to have. Not that they want to have like a bucket list, like, oh, it'd be cool to go skydiving or bungee jumping. Like, what are the things you need to do in your life so you don't get to the end of it and have serious regret? And having them go do that. And then the fun piece is I'm going to go do a lot of it with them.
Oh, neat. Oh my gosh.
Going to get me out from behind the computer into the world, doing things that scare me, that terrify me. And we're going to do them together.
Oh man, that sounds fun. Oh gosh. All right, so let's pretend I'm your, I'm your coaching client. What are we going out to do? How would this go? If you're setting up a program for me, let's say all the readers and viewers of Entrepreneurs Gone Wild as well. If you pick one thing,
it would be completely dependent on them. That's a huge thing. I know it's kind of a cop out, but yeah, it really is. We're going to pick something that is your dream, that aligns to what you want to do, something that's going to move you forward in your journey. Yeah. I could say, okay, Sue, it has to be we're running a marathon, or it has to be we are underwater wrestling with sharks. But like, it wouldn't be as powerful as if it comes from you. And so my whole coaching, it's this really delicate balance between having a framework and having a path, but also letting the client lead. I'm not going to say we have to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to say X, Y, and Z could potentially help with this. How do you feel about it?
Very coachy. I like it.
Yeah, very coachy.
That's so cool. So I know, a lot of entrepreneurs will do, we do this embracing this, discomfort on purpose. Very common thing is the cold plunge or turn your shower cold. I do that every day. Turn the shower cold for the last, 30 seconds or so. How do you think this works? Why does this work so well?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me this question. I just heard the most compelling reason to do hard things, right? There's the physical benefit, there's the physiological benefit, but I recently learned about a neurological benefit from Dr. Andy Huberman, who everyone probably knows who listens to this podcast. There's this part of your brain called the AMCC. It's the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And it's so fascinating. It has to do with grit and resiliency and your willingness and tenacity to do hard things. And there's studies showing that when you do things that you don't want to do, your AMCC grows. So this part of your brain actually gets bigger, and the size of your AMCC has been linked to longevity. they did this study on people called superagers, which the criteria to be a superager is your mental capacity has to be the same or improved as yourself when you were 50. And these people are in their 70s and 80s. So they're super mentally sharp. They're all there. And they think that the larger your AMCC is, you're more mentally clear into old age, but you actually live longer because this part of your brain is related to your will to live, your will to overcome. It's like the most human thing. We were designed to overcome challenges. And when you do things that you don't want to do, when you do the hard thing, when you take the ice bath, when you turn the shower to cold, you're actually growing this part of your brain that's going to make you live longer, that's going to keep you mentally sharp into your old age. So anyone listening to this, if you want to run your business for as long as possible, if you want to be sharp and funny and witty when you're old, do the things you don't want to do. And the most fascinating part is that you and I could do the same activity. If I love running and you hate running and we both go on a run, your AMC is going to grow because you don't like it. Mine isn't going to change at all because I like it. So you actually have to find the things that you don't want to do and push yourself out of your comfort zone to do them.
That is really cool. Oh my gosh. All right. So in your example only, what are the next 5 things on your list? The 5 things you don't want to do, but they're going to grow that.
So good. So I actually don't like running. I've done some big running challenges, but I really don't like running, probably because I run a couple miles and then I try and do a Herculean effort and burn myself out. But running is one I'm doing. Another one is speaking, public speaking. I did Toastmasters. I've learned a lot, but like most people, it's freaking scary to get in front of people and give speeches. So pushing myself to give more speeches, and eventually part of my plan is to be a paid speaker. Doing that is growing my AMCC. I think ice baths are probably across the board. They work for most people because no one loves freezing cold water. So I have an ice bath, I get in it. And what comes to me in this moment when you ask that question, it's really making more proposals. And when I say proposal, I mean simply saying, hey, you say you want these things, I would love to help you with that. That's one of my biggest fears, is coming off as salesy or pushy. And yet I know I'm holding myself back because there will be someone who I know I can help, who would love the help, but I don't make the offer because I'm scared of being pushy or salesy. So for me, I think my AMCC will be growing as I do more of that. I simply say, hey, I would love to help you with that.
That's really cool. I don't think you're alone at all in that. A lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, that's the thing, making the offer, because then they can say no, and they can say worse than no, no, and how dare you, some variation of that. That's really, really cool. All right. So what do you do for your outdoor time? I know we've talked a little bit before we started recording. You like to surf. You've clearly run some crazy stuff. Nobody likes running. Well, maybe people do. I don't know, but
I have some friends who like running.
They do.
They keep trying to
like running. It's crazy.
They keep trying to make me do more of these challenges, and I'm like, I don't like running. I don't want to do
another hobby, guys.
Right. So for me, as you mentioned, surfing is huge. Surfing is so therapeutic for me. Being in the ocean, I think it's healing. And there's also this part of surfing that is really beneficial for me because I love structure, I love routine, I like to control the things in my life. Yet surfing is the least predictable, least controllable thing. You can't decide you're going to surf for an hour each morning. I mean, you can go, but the waves are always different. You can't schedule it like you schedule your workouts or anything else. And so it helps me flow, kind of ride the wave of life.
Yeah.
So I love surfing. I'm incredibly addicted to pickleball. So I'm playing a lot of pickleball these days because pickleball is another one of those sports. Like surfing, I can do it forever. I can just keep getting better over time. I tell people jokingly, my goal is to be pro by the time I'm 45. Just going to keep getting, 1% better every year. Surfing, pickleball, love hiking, getting outside. Hiking is one of my favorite ways to connect with people, whether it's a date or just getting to know people for the first time. Hiking, it's so good. You kind of get into this flow state of hiking and walking and talking. So I love all that. And then camping, all the things. I love being outside.
That's so great, man. I love that. I can see you being the professional pickleball player, and we will know you when. But
Fingers
that's so
crossed.
cool. Yeah, I think that's awesome. And the hiking, I think it's so, there's just something about having your legs moving and you're not straining your brain trying to do anything that requires a whole bunch of attention. But that way, do you find like you're more open? Like, how do your conversations change when you're out hiking? Do you notice a perceptible difference?
I think it's much easier to get into a flow state.
Mm-hmm.
You're just cruising along, talking about cool stuff, and then you realize it's been like 2 hours and the conversation has just been epic.
Yeah.
And walking in general, another big part of my outdoor routine is every day just walking. I have like a 10-minute little loop around my neighborhood. I always do that. I usually do that one of the first things in the morning to get outside, to get some daylight. But then throughout the day, I'll make myself get up from my computer, go outside and move. And it's wild. So it's a 10-minute loop. 3/4 of the way, if I'm struggling with something, if I'm stressed, if I'm ruminating on something, almost exactly in the same spot, 75% of the way through, I start to feel better. It's just this thing where going on a 10-minute walk makes me feel so much better.
Yeah. That's cool how that happens. I find, so I do the same thing. You got to be outdoors first thing, you got to get the sunlight in the eyes, take the 10-minute walk, all of this. What are you doing when your best ideas are hitting? Like, you've got a lot of options there. Let's say if you wanted to actually I'm going to solve this problem or think about this. What would you choose? What's your go-to?
I have many different options. Going on a walk and thinking about it is probably where I start. Then I will come back and I'll journal. It's weird. I'm both a written processor and a verbal processor. So I'll journal about it. Then I'll usually start talking to people about it to workshop it a little bit, see if it makes sense, see what they think. And then the best thing is to teach someone about it. So if it's like an idea or a concept, that's kind of the flow chart or the process flow. If it's something I'm struggling with, it's all of those things and meditation. Meditation is huge, right? I'm not actually thinking about the thing at the time while I'm meditating, but it's played such a big role in my life. I started meditating in 2018, I think, when I was studying for the CFA, and it saved me. It has been so helpful in my life. Just 10 minutes every day, nothing crazy. I'm not levitating yet.
Yet. And so if you were going to assign somebody, I want you to start meditating, how would you walk them through this?
So many different ways to do it. One of the easiest ways is sit down for 5 minutes and just sit there. You can think, you can not think, like whatever you're doing is right. You can't do it wrong. Just close your eyes. That's a really helpful way. Guided meditation can sometimes be a lot easier. Just look up a guided meditation on YouTube. There's one called the 6-Phase Meditation by Vishen Lakhiani. Oh, yeah. Super famous. People love that one. I did that one for years just to get started. Kind of just depends whether you want guided or just silence. I use this app called Insight Timer. It's free. Just set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes depending on the day. And I just sit there. And like now, because I've done it for so long, my body and my mind, I take this like deep, refreshing, nurturing breath when I meditate. That's what it feels like. I really just sink into creating space for myself, and it's great.
So neat. That's so great, man. I'm so excited for your life. I got to tell you. I mean, to be doing all this and thinking about this and thinking this way in your 20s, I can tell you the next 30, 40, 50 years are going to be dramatically different than they would have been if you were in finance, which is no surprise to you, but this is so cool.
Thank you.
So where can people find out about working with you? Tell us about the podcast, everything.
Absolutely. So my website is gregoryrussellbenedikt.com. Benedikt is spelled with a K instead of a C. And that's a good place to start. You can book a call with me to connect, to learn more. We can just chat about coaching, or we can just chat about life. You can follow me on Instagram, Gregory Russell Benedikt. The podcast is the Dare to Dream podcast. You can find that Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Apple Music, whatever it's called these days. And what was I going to say? Oh, Instagram, you can go check out. We kind of mentioned this at the very beginning, those videos where I was going up to strangers, asking them for crazy things. I have one left because I finished the challenge, but I have one left on my Instagram that you can go check out. It was day 4 of the challenge. I knocked on a stranger's door and asked if I could jump in his swimming pool. And he said yes, and he filmed it. And so you can go see a video of me doing a cannonball in a stranger's swimming pool. That was really that was the birth of the Boldness movement. Now I'm trying to consistently do things like that just scare me, put me out of my comfort zone.
That is cool. All right, no, I hadn't planned on that. I've forgotten about that, but I got to hear what are some more of the crazy things you did.
Jumping in someone's swimming pool was one of my favorites. Asking strangers if I could cook them dinner in their home. No one said yes to that one. I almost got a man to cook chili with me. Asking if I could drive the Amazon delivery truck. Asking the mailman if I could drive their car.
Did they let you?
No, none of those people did because they'd get fired. I almost had some construction workers let me drive a steamroller. I was really close. What are some other ones? Asking if I could get a discount for having an incredibly good mustache. That one actually worked. And there's so many. Asking multiple strangers. I was with Stacy, who we referenced at the beginning of the podcast, and we did a bunch. We got strangers to do the Macarena with us. What else did we do with her? I asked a guy when I was with her, I asked a man if he would do 45 seconds of uninterrupted eye contact with me. He said no. So there was a whole list of things. And it was really cool because, so I made that video on Instagram. It got a ton of views. So I started asking everyone who liked it, thousands of people, what should I do next? They started giving me all of these ideas, and they started getting really, really specific. Like, ask a stranger if you can cook dinner for them in their home. I got that one like 100 times. And I started to realize that, okay, there's probably someone out there who's doing this. And these are probably videos that person has made. Turns out there is. His name is Brad, and he has this YouTube channel called Discover Connection. And I got to meet Brad because we had a mutual friend. And so I met Brad, and yeah, he does this professionally. And so that's been super cool. He just came out with a video. His most recent one is cooking dinner in a stranger's home for 10 people in Compton. And the scariest part, so when you go watch that video, the scariest part is I was almost the chef. He called me the day before saying, "Do you know how to cook?" Our chef bailed. And I was like, "I know how to cook for myself." And again, it was the live a story worth telling, seek discomfort. Like, how hard can it be? I'll figure it out. So I said yes. Luckily, he called me 5-6 hours later and said, "Dude, you will not believe this. We got Chef Rush, who is the ex-White House chef, to cook for us." So he went instead of me, which was a huge blessing. That's how I know the universe is looking out for me.
Oh my gosh. Gregory, that's so cool. So are you going to make more of these? Or do you have like an ongoing list? This sounds like this could be a thing.
The vulnerable story I'm sharing about it all right now is that I set out to do 100 days. I did 66 days, and I did what most people do, is I lost the why. I was like, okay, why am I doing this? I feel like I've gotten everything I need to out of random bold asks. And so I made up this, logical, reasonable story like, okay, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to make the remaining 34 around bold proposals in my coaching business. It's going to be great. And then I just haven't. I've made a couple bold proposals, but the resistance is real. And so I recognize that. And now the ending to the story is the remaining 34 days doing things. I'm calling it again, I'm tying it back into living a story worth telling. Like all of the moments where I could have said no, lived an ordinary day, and instead I say yes, and it's slightly extraordinary. And an example of this is the other night. So I've done 2 of these so far, so I have 32 left. The other night, I'm driving home from pickleball with my buddy, and he's like, "What if we jumped in the ocean right now?" It was sunset. And I was like, immediately, we don't have towels. We're not wearing swimsuits. I don't want my car to get sandy and wet. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's jump in the ocean. We'll figure it out. So we jump in, we get out. It turned out to not be a problem. There was a shower. We washed our feet off. We used our shirts to dry off. I had plastic, reusable grocery bags that we sat on the way home. And so none of my reasons to not do it ended up mattering. And that was a huge unlock for me. It made me realize 2 things. First is that I still struggle with the resistance, and there's so many reasons not to do the thing. And so it made me realize that that's where I want to focus on in 2024, is building that muscle. The second thing is that while jumping in the ocean, who cares? It seems so small. That instance of wanting to do something and then not doing it because of all these reasons, that is the same essence as the person who is stuck working in finance, who wants to do something else, but doesn't do it because there's all of these reasons. And those reasons are way bigger and way more reasonable than jumping in the ocean. But that was a big unlock for me. And so the last 32 days are more of these opportunities where I make little decisions to push past the reasons not to, and then just see what happens and document it. And it's kind of, it started out, so grand and extraordinary with jumping in someone's pool. And now at the end, I'm kind of bringing it down to more reasonable, realistic things that everyone can do. And I think that's actually going to be more helpful for people than, hey, go do this crazy thing that scares you.
Yeah. What hits me is that phrase about how we do anything is how we do everything. By going, spontaneity can really suffer. I think for entrepreneurs, we're like, well, but I got to do this. I got to do that. I don't want to sand. If I get my car sandy, then I got to take the time to go vacuum it. Get the, there's always perfectly good reasons not to do something crazy, right? But maybe that's going to show up in other ways. Guarantee that's going to show up in other things that we're doing. So that's really cool. I love that with the boldness, and that, maybe you just don't say no to those things and try it. And I love that you're able to pull a lesson from that. Does that happen all the time for you, or, regularly anyway? You're doing something kind of crazy and whammo, something major hits you in the head about, little insight there.
Usually it's looking back at it, or in the moment, but usually looking back at it, I can distill a lesson. I mean, that's what I love. My love language is sharing, teaching, talking about things I'm learning. And so it's the best. And that's my new favorite question to ask people, is when they want to do something and there's reasons not to do it, I just ask, well, what happened if you just did it instead? Like, regardless of the reasons, because most of the reasons won't actually matter.
That is solid. I love this. I hope you'll come back sometime. And I hope you'll come out to Idlewild Woods, the retreat center. Will you come out?
I will absolutely be there. I love retreats. I want to go on more retreats. Doing retreats is a part of my journey at some point. And so, yes, I will be participating. I'll be learning from you. Thank you so much for having me, Sue. This has been fantastic.
I'm really glad. I'm so glad we met through Stacy. Thank you so much for joining us. This is really cool.
Thank you.